Hi everyone. So for the reflection today, I'm inviting people to reflect on air. And air is a quality that you can't touch. You can see the effects of air. You can see the wind when it moves through the trees. And you can see what is the outline. So if you look at the outline of something, of a vase or your hand, you can't see air, but you can reflect on the outline of your hand, the aura around your hand, and how important air is for us when we breathe, when we sing, when we make music. There has to be silence in order for music to be produced, for that inspiration to come. And for many people, it takes discipline. Like, people will look at me and say, "You're such an inspiration." And people have even said that to me on X, on social media, on different platforms. But to be that inspiration, there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's years of preparation, of perseverance. There's years of dedication that people don't see. And when you think about air, the air that fills our lungs and that gives us life, it's hard to imagine how life could exist. Life couldn't exist without air. And when we think of even a vacuum, you can't produce music in a vacuum. Air is such an important part of our lives and how our lives unfold. And when people say that they're not supporting me, I'm like, okay, well, I'll move on and I'll find something else and someone else who will support me. Because when you look at air, you can't control where air goes. You can't control what air does. And that's how the Holy Spirit is. It's not something you can taste. It's not something you can touch. It's not something that is tangible, but air is so important to us. And anybody who supports me is ultimately supporting my mother and my family. Because when things don't work out for me, then things don't work out for my mother. Like today, my mother wants to go out to the post office or to the bank to get things done. But because she's elderly and she has health problems, she can't go out because they're older, driving in the snow and all of that. It's harder for them compared to somebody who's younger, somebody who can go out and shovel the driveway and get into the car and just go. And so all of these things, when we think about a life and how our life touches other people, it comes through air. It comes through that breath of air. And sometimes if you think of that phrase, a breath of fresh air, that's what Vatican II was about, because the church was becoming sleepy. And some masses are like that. When you go to church, it's like, "Oh, I'm going to sleep here, Lord, help me stay awake." But others are not. Others are vibrant and full of life and full of energy. And that's what fills the air. Whatever that energy is, it will fill the air and it will transform it. And we too, we live and we move and we breathe in air. Air is so important to us. And gravity that holds us down. Otherwise, we'd all be floating around, walking on air. So I'd invite you to think about air, the quality of air where you live. I live in the city. So there's some days the quality of air in my city is not that good in Toronto. The air stinks some days, especially if you go downtown and you go like to the places where there's lots of restaurants and places like that. There's some days where I'm like, wow, the air quality has become so bad. It reminds me of India. It may not be as bad as Mumbai, but it's like it's pretty bad because you get that stench. And other days, it's like the air smells really good. Like it's very clean. You don't have that stench. So air is so important to us, and the way our bodies function, the way our lungs are built by God to keep out all the particles that can lead to us getting sick and lead to us becoming decrepit. It's amazing when you think about it, because some people, depending on genetics or other things, some people can smoke like chimneys. They can smoke like a whole pack of cigarettes a day and nothing happens to them. They don't get cancer, they don't get sick. It's just a substance that they are using, like people use marijuana. Some people use it for medicine, other people use it for recreation, and nothing happens to them. And yet you can find that somebody else who doesn't even smoke, they can land up getting secondary cancer from the air that they're breathing in, from living with somebody who smokes or being in an environment where somebody smokes. So it's pretty amazing to think how each of us has a path in life, and the air that we breathe encompasses all of us. Like when we had the fires, in England and that smoke affected Canada, or when Canada had fires, that air was blown into the United States, and that air affected people living there. People couldn't go to work, people couldn't function normally, we had to wear masks. So air is a pretty amazing thing to reflect on, and to reflect on what does it mean to be an inspiration. Because to be an inspiration to others, it takes years of dedication, it takes years of constant studying, constant refining of your craft, constantly being open to changes. And for me as a spiritual director, that's one component of my life. There are spiritual directors they have schools and they are very financially secure. They have homes, they have properties. I don't have that yet, but that doesn't mean that I'm giving up on my goals and my dreams, because that's one component of my life. And most of the time I take people who can't afford to pay, so they don't pay me for the time that they have with me. And we also don't take family, because it's very difficult to try to take family for spiritual direction, because it just becomes too complicated, because they say, oh, you think you know better than us, or it comes across as pompous or other things. So people don't go to family for spiritual direction. We can pray together, we can go to church together, but we don't take people in our own families for spiritual direction. And I have a business career, so I work in project management now. I started off as an executive assistant, and that's what I did when I was in England. I worked in reception work, admin work, in law firms, construction firms, and then I came here to Canada, and I started off in finance as an executive assistant in HR, and then I went into the business, into operations. So I was working as a business analyst, and then I went into project coordination. And I always had components of HR in my work, whether it was putting together policies or guiding the business leaders with HR safety, helping with the recruitment, taking the pulse surveys of how people were feeling about the workplace and in the workplace doing their jobs. I had that component of HR in it, and putting together the projects, tracking them, dealing with the budgets. And I do that in my voluntary work as well. When I was on the HRPA committee for mentorship, I used to do the planning of the events in the hotels and track the budgets and make sure we worked within the budgets that were provided to us. And they were not big budgets. They were like $3,000 for an event. And within that, we had to plan and execute everything. So I have a lot of experience in business, and that's where I make my money. I don't make it off the spiritual direction, because I don't get those opportunities to do it. like Carolyn Myss or other world-famous people. I make my money through working in organizations. It could be mainly it's digital IT, so dealing with cybersecurity, dealing with closing gaps for money laundering, dealing with things that are coming up, resolving problems, helping to save money for organizations, doing the setup for consultants. Those are all areas that I deal with. And I earn a paycheck when I go out and work for companies. They pay me, and that's how I pay my bills. So if I don't have work coming in, then that doesn't just affect me. It affects my mother, my brother, my sister. It affects my friends. It affects extended family. Because a lot of people, because they know my work ethic and they know I'm diligent and hardworking, have been helping me because they know my qualifications in HR, in project management, as an executive assistant. And so they send me money for food. And you have to be open to receiving. I don't like receiving. But because I've been put in a position where I don't have a choice, I go out and I ask people. I tell people. I send out that link to say that I'm looking for donations. And my mother also sends it out for me. She sends it out for me to her network, to people that she knows, and she tells people that I'm looking for work. Not just in the Catholic Church, and not just like in banks, but wherever I get that opportunity. Sometimes it could be a startup like Teleperformance was, or it could be another area. Because ultimately, if I land up being on the street, then what's going to happen to my mother? Because I'm her support person. So it's important to think about these things and to think about our space, where we live, where we move, where we have our being, and how we're caring for the air around us and caring for what has been given to us by God. People are creating a lot of things these days, even the oxygen that we breathe when we go into hospital, if we go on to life support. There's a lot of things that can be created. But our life, our time, once that day is gone, once that moment is gone, we can't get that moment back. So it's nice that people are telling me I'm an inspiration, but when you go through difficult times like this, you don't see it that way. And I don't see it that way. But I persevere and I carry on moving forward, and I carry on learning and growing in whatever area it is. And the next job I land, wherever that will be, I'll be learning new things there. I'll be growing in that area. And with a little bit of luck and God's continued blessing, I'll continue to move in this air and be an inspiration to others. Because for me, the Lord is my source. He's my healer. He's my provider. He's my redeemer. He's my sanctifier. He's everything to me. And He knows that I don't have a job. I don't have an income coming in. He knows my efforts. He knows that I go online and I apply. He knows that I talk to people, I network. He knows that my mother is also dependent on me getting this job, and that she would also like to see me buy my own property and to have something of my own. And that's what is important. It's to know that this air that we are breathing in, we're all breathing in the same air. And it's a testimony to see how countries can come together when there's a crisis. Even the African leaders sent people here to help with the fires when we needed. And so it's important for us to be people who are excited about the gospel, excited about our lives, excited about new opportunities. I don't like going to sleepy churches. I just don't. That's not who I am. But sometimes you need that. You need to go on a retreat. You need to slow down. You need to relax. So it really depends on where you are in your life, and it depends on what you need at that moment. And I trust that God will provide and that God will help me, because believe you me, it's not only stressful for me to go into bankruptcy, it's also stressful for my family and my friends. And so I pray that this is going to be a year that good things come and that things change for Canada and for our air quality to be good, because we've dealt with a lot with the fires and with everything that's happened, and people are feeling under stress, a lot of pressure, not just me. But that's the beauty of air. We can't create air. And if the air is gone, we'll be in a vacuum and the life will be gone. So it's just something to think about how air is important and the different spaces we enter into, what the air feels like in those places, whether we work there or we live there, when we're out in nature. It's a nice way to think about air and to reflect on air.